I mean, really compare the humor from The Last Jedi to the humor that can be found in the OT. Yes, they have comedic moments like Yoda's antics or Han Solo's quibs, but they're not a detriment because the balance is maintained. They're brief, more scarce, not interrupting the story, and they're also more natural to the world they're in.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, I'm not gonna worry about the sparse parts since I've already proven that you're exaggerating that. But let's talk about the short and fits into the world aspects before revealing what this proves you're really thinking. So first, short. You know that almost every moment you've talked about has been less than 5 seconds long, right? Hell, the ones you've done the most to highlight were not only less than 5 seconds, but also were in the middle of a conversation where they just passed without incident. As in, it was part of the conversation, and then things moved like normal. This is especially prevalent in your comment about Rey reacting to Kylo shirtless. And if we really want to compare that to in OT, especially Han Solo one-liners, yeah, it's the same thing, just more frequent, which I actually will get to. Second, fitting into the world. Bro, some of these things are literally part of the world-building aspects of the movie, and you mean to tell me they don't fit? Okay, how? Or is this just a generic statement meant to sound like it means something when in reality, it's about as empty as the rest of the 3.5-hour dumpster fire you brought here? Yeah, I thought so. But let's get back to the frequency of the jokes, because your confusion about this seems to come down to overall tone. I've watched a lot of Star Wars movies and TV shows. I've played a lot of Star Wars games. I've read less Star Wars books, but still a lot. You know what's part of what makes Star Wars what it is? The fact that it doesn't take itself as seriously as you seem to imply it's supposed to. Star Wars isn't all grit all the time, even though there are some works that lean in that direction. Sure, fine, but overall the series is still supposed to be fun. So having small elements of fun with more serious scenes is not your thing, then maybe Star Wars isn't the right fucking franchise for you. Sure, the comedic aspects of the OTU are more muted than anything else, but not only is this stilted and super serious writing style that tried to force itself to sound loose what gave us the holiday special, but it was also done in the early 80s. And I'm not sure if you knew this, but the art of filmmaking has evolved since then. This isn't the fucking Revenant. Stop treating it like it's supposed to be. I mean, if I really wanted a Star Wars movie that takes itself way too seriously, then I'd just go watch Star Trek. Oh damn, I know I'm gonna get flack for that one.
Additionally, these jokes help to establish and humanize the characters, giving us insight into their personalities and how they interact with each other. Now tell me, what was the purpose of Rey seeing Kylo Ren with his shirt off and having a dumb reaction like a teenage girl with a crush?
Considering how Rise of Skywalker ends, you really want me to answer that? Fuck, I thought part of the point was to take what we didn't know when the movie came out into consideration. Even if the scene was what you described, which it wasn't, the reasoning would be more prevalent now than then.
I mean, besides feeding into the sick freaks who think romanticizing abusive relationships is an okay thing to do. This doesn't give insight into Rey's character or her relationship with Kylo. It's just there for the sake of having something awkward. It turns this dramatic and serious war story into a stupid teen movie. It's incessant, forced, and childish.
Okay, I'll get to the actual problem here in a second, but let's talk about it being forced. That's a little subjective, as when I look at the scene, I don't really see that, or the romantic implications. That being said, the scenario does kind of feel like one out of a teen movie, specifically accidentally walking on someone while they're changing, but as a single one-liner before we move on instead of what you describe it as, and yes, nothing says dramatic war story like two people being forcibly psychically linked. And look, whether you think that this is romanticizing abuse or not, which is a good talking point to make about the trilogy, but not one I can 100% agree with because I think it's something much worse than that. Let's assume that this character dynamic is intended to show that. So the question is, does showing that she reacts to his physical features tell us anything about the character? Yes. It tells us that Rey finds him attractive. The fact she tells him to put a shirt on tells us that she finds that distracting, including that it's something that, even to a minor degree, inhibits rational thought when dealing with this man. Whether what we are being shown is a good thing or not, your joke about romanticizing abuse proves that this serves to display the exact thing that you said scenes like this do not serve to display. So, not only are you objectively wrong about what the scenes actually contain and exaggerating to make the movie sound worse than it is, but you're also wrong when taking what you say at face value and applying your own logic to it. And we haven't even hit the second topic of discussion. I'm breaking out skip cards now. You repeat yourself a lot. Although, one of your examples in the listing of jokes, I do want to touch on.
She's a bitch! This girl has said so much shit about you when you're—
A resistant sniper tasting space rocks, and a security guard being easily defeated by a tiny robot shooting casino tokens and a mugger hitting him in the head with a boot, despite that he was wearing a fucking helmet, in a film that we're supposed to be taking relatively seriously.
Alright, let's talk about this sequence right here. First of all, comedic fight scene, whatever. Guess what? I can prove why this worked. So, first of all, the casino chips. For one, we don't really know what the chips are made of, so we're left to assume that they're made of some kind of metal. Yet, also note how all the chips really do is cause the guard in question to put his hands up and distract him from what DJ does, hitting him with the boots over his head, which I'll get to in a minute. Yeah, launch a bunch of quarters at somebody, see if it doesn't at least make the majority of people at least flinch, and probably leave bruises and welts. But note how after the barrage, BB-8 blows smoke from the arm used to fire it off, meaning that these were being launched with enough speed to create that much friction. Even if they were plastic, that's still a lot of force coming at someone repeatedly. But again, all this does is create the opening for the boot shot. For one, the fact that he's wearing a helmet doesn't mean a strike specifically targeting the head isn't going to do anything. Those things are made to stop bullets, not necessarily concussions. They're not football helmets after all. And he also drops the boot straight on top of his head, which is more likely to hit a weak spot than if he had swung the boot to hit the side of his head. And he doesn't have to kill, only knock him out. That boot also appears to have a steel toe, and considering the fact that he brought the bottom of the shoe down onto him, it seems likely that this would factor in the weight of the boot, and thus the force of the strike. The fact that they're steel-toed boots, in fact, is probably why he didn't want to continue wearing them on his feet during his escape. Like, there are so many reasons why a strike like this would be realistically effective, but no. There's comedy involved, and as we all know, jokes aren't allowed in Star Wars unless they are pre-approved set of one-liners from the International Comedy Manual of 1974. Fuck off!
It's like Doug Walker somehow got a hold of the writing process and started going hog wild with all of his terrible ideas. And it just won't stop. It's bad enough that the jokes are constantly failing to be funny while breaking the tone, but it follows you constantly throughout the entire film. It's so painfully desperate to get even the tiniest chuckle out of you that it will hammer the comedy incessantly into your head like they're actually in the background shouting, "Please find us funny."
Actually, that sounds more like you. You know, so painfully desperate to get even the slightest validation for your shit-tier takes, you'll hammer the point incessantly to the point where I can almost hear you in my room saying, "Please agree with me, for I require the approval of the internet in spite of the fact that I literally named myself after the concept of hating people." You know, kind of like that.
And when you put it all together, the comedy in The Last Jedi is cringe. It is so cringe.
Alright, I think we're done here. Next segment.
This girl has said so much shit about you when you're—
And I really wish that the comedy and constant shift in tone was the main problem, but this is only the cherry on top of the sundae with how horrible The Last Jedi is. Because now we have to talk about the characters. And the characters in this movie range from bland, to annoying, to insulting, to, "Oh my god, will you please get off the screen?" Everyone in this movie, except maybe Finn and Poe, is just an incompetent buffoon. And they make up some of the most irritating people that I've ever had the misfortune of spending my time with.
Alright, I want you to keep in mind that we're moving on to the characters now. This is gonna bite MisAnthro in the ass later. Yes, I'm serious. The fact that we are now on the character portion of the video is gonna bite this dude in the ass. Fuck me, this video is ridiculous!
Let's talk about Finn and Rose first, since I guess it would be easier to start with them. I might get people disagreeing with me on this, but Finn in The Force Awakens was a good character. I keep seeing people saying that he should have been the protagonist, and I can see why they would say that. He was more developed and had a much more interesting setup than Rey. A stormtrooper who has second thoughts about the Empire and questions his allegiance, tries to run away from the war afraid of the Order's power, but through the friendships he makes along his travels, he starts to understand the weight of what's at stake. He finally works up the courage to join the war effort, stand up to his former superiors, and is willing to lay down his life fighting Kylo Ren to protect Rey. He goes through a legitimate character arc about overcoming his fears and finding the courage to stand against the enemy. And it was also a setup being given to a stormtrooper, who are normally just seen as background fodder for the good guys to beat up on. This was a pretty unique concept for Star Wars, at least for the main movies, and there was a genuine sense of effort being put into establishing his character. It made us want to see what they were going to do with him, and upon seeing the next two movies, we immediately regret putting so much investment into him. The first problem comes from how it feels like his character is just regressing into being a coward who runs away from the war. Even with the setup that they were down to their last legs, the Finn who developed the courage to fight back wouldn't just abandon everyone like this. He would have stayed and gone down with the ship, staying loyal to the end. In some way, he kinda just goes through the same thing that he did last time. He starts off trying to run away from the war, and at the end, he's willing to sacrifice himself to save others. It's a blatant rehash of his character arc from the first film, and it's made worse here because they don't put any time into properly developing his arc.
Oh boy. And yeah, I did in fact need all of that. Look, I'm at the bottom of page 18 of the script right now, and I fully expect this one point to take me into page 20. So buckle your seatbelts, maybe watch an ad. Oh yeah, that's right. I don't have a Raid sponsorship yet. Seriously, Johnson & Johnson, big missed opportunity. I can sell all your bug spray. Anyway, so first of all, your own fucking text points out the outright lie you're spewing out of your garbage hole. And your explanation for why it matters is stupid. For one, it's not vague. He outright says that's his intention. And of course, there's no guarantee he'd come back to the ship because the entire point was to make sure that Rey could have safety on the way back. Hell, that supposedly comedic scene of him busting out the healing or whatever that you keep harping on about, part of the point of that was establishing loyalty to Rey. In addition, this is probably going to come up later as well, but one of the themes of this movie is the difference between laying down your life for a cause and accomplishing something and just throwing your life away, as highlighted before when Leia chews out Poe for his attack resulting in huge losses. Sure, they took out a Star Destroyer, but she demotes him because of how stark a cost it came and that they cannot afford to pay, which also plays into the final point of Finn's character arc in the movie that we're going to get into later. I'm not even willing to agree there is a problem with what Finn does. Finn just takes the beacon and dips when he knows that it's being used to track them through warps. And then, when he talks to Poe, he's able to relay what's going on just fine. Okay, why didn't he just do that in the first place? Now, I can explain why you didn't initially think of that. Finn is still acting on impulse, but as the scene you're talking about fucking spells out when he defends himself from Rose, calling him a traitor and a coward, that impulse is born not of cowardice, but of a desire to protect. In fact, it was very much not an act of self-preservation. It stands to reason that he had reason to believe the First Order would follow the beacon, and he could expect to die. His plan was dumb because Finn isn't good at planning things. Rose realized he was doing a dumb thing for a good reason, so she's like, hey, Poe, we need a plan that might be a little reckless. You're good at those. Hey, speaking of that scene, you know what would have been an actual good example of a pointless comedy that interferes with the serious nature of a scene? This one! You know, the one you don't mention. There was really no reason for him to have to flop his arms around like he was Mr. Spaghetti McKenzie, other than lol, how funny. All we have to do was establish that he wasn't able to walk and he still could have been carried off just fine. Hell, she still could have seen the beacon and not known the purpose of it before Finn explains it in that scene. So him being restrained in some way would have also worked. And yet, this scene doesn't get a mention for pointless comedy when Finn is wackily flopping around more here than in the post-battle medbay escape. Oh, but of course, this serves an actual storyline purpose. Yeah, didn't stop you from including the aforementioned medbay escape now, did ya? Or the Jedi Zoom call with Kylo and Rey, or most of the other things you actually brought up. Hey, guess what? Not done. Fuck your character regression bullshit. Yeah, characters have arcs that finish and they evolve, but that doesn't mean the old behaviors they exhibited should completely disappear, and a character arc cannot repeat itself under the right circumstances. Finn showed acts of bravery, and even if his character did regress to the point of being more cowardly, yeah, maybe considering the fact that the point where he almost died was the point where he didn't run away, it's possible that lesson was reasonably unlearned. You seem to have forgotten that, from a self-preservation standpoint, him standing up to his former superiors resulted in failure. He individually wound up far worse because of it, so it would have been actually reasonable in his character arc if he became more flighty. Which, as a reminder, isn't even what fucking happened. In other words, not only are you wrong about his character being regressed on a fundamental level, you wouldn't even be inherently right about it being negative if you were correct. I technically didn't get to page 20, I'm sorry.
If anything, he ends up taking a back seat while Rose is made into the more central character for the subplot. Finn doesn't do anything significant in the entire film. Like, you could have easily left him in the hospital bed and have Rose go on her quest with some random resistance fighter. You get the exact same thing. Even his conflict with Phasma is so rushed and so haphazardly added in the middle of the second act that it feels like they just did not give a shit. Finn coming face to face with Phasma was supposed to be the culmination of his character arc, his shining moment in the trilogy, and they just go through it in the blink of an eye in a really half-assed way. Like they just wanted to get it over with as soon as possible because they already have a bunch of stuff going on with Rey, Luke, and Kylo. It's just hand-waved away when it should have been a much bigger moment in the trilogy. And on that note, I really hope Gwendoline Christie was happy with her 3 minutes of screen time as her character got no development across 2 movies.
But I'm at page 20 now. Okay, see, this I generally agree with, and I could probably get into this in the video that's more specifically about Last Jedi, but this movie's third act felt like it dragged on for ages. I think the issue was, to put it in storytelling terms, there were too many rising actions all happening at once that led to more rising actions. And it over-twisted itself, to put it bluntly, where it was difficult to mentally invest in what was going on. In fact, they probably would have done good having action scenes interspersed with a more calm dialogue sequence, which was done very well at the very end of the space battle, but well, then the movie just kept going to the point where it made Holdo's sacrifice feel kind of pointless. Now, I would argue that Finn's conflict with Phasma didn't necessarily need a super long fight scene as a resolution, but this fight was very short, and the ending was very abrupt. I'm not saying that this needed to be the length of a Triple H WrestleMania match, but, you know, longer than The Rock versus Eric Rowan would help. Use pauses in action and stare downs to elongate things like you did at the very end of the fight, and keep the pacing going. You could probably find an extra minute or two by trimming some of the fat from the rest of the third act of the movie. Might I recommend the salt thing being cut? Maybe cut the portable Death Star bullshit down, since it wasn't even that important in the grand scheme of things anyway. If you have a bunch of action scenes that look cool and don't mean anything, they stop becoming cool, JJ! Oh yeah, that's right. This is the one that Abrams didn't direct. I stand by my statement, damn it!
We relate to her due to her actions and her character.
What a fucking waste. I remember Zam Wessel more than I do this waste of a Boba Fett clone. She had a bigger effect on the story than Phasma did.
I would normally skip over this pointless hyperbole, but I honestly thought initially that with your wording combined with the fact that I don't remember this fucking character in the slightest, you were talking about a character from this movie. That being said, bullshit. Phasma had the good guys captured and makes sense for the personality of her character, for her influence on the story to be related to what she surrounds herself with rather than her own direct actions. She didn't really need to do much, whereas the purpose of Zam Wessel was to be the character taking action. Oh, and yeah, I don't think I even need to bring up Boba Fett. You already did it for me. The fact that she has more screen time, emotional investment, and dialogue in her 2 movies than Boba Fett had in his should speak volumes to why your disdain for Phasma while calling out, you know what? Fuck it, I'll save it for later.
The battle on Crate was the closest that they came to do anything meaningful with him, and even that ends up meaning nothing because they just have Rose robbing us of a meaningful heroic sacrifice. If they actually had the balls to go through with this, it would have given the climax a sense of meaning, creating actual stakes and raising the tension.
Okay, so first of all, remember what I was saying earlier about how the movie intentionally separates necessary sacrifice and throwing your life away? Yeah, that was the point. Look, I have my own reasons for disliking Rose's direction here that I'll get into in a few minutes, but given the conflict between self-preservation and sacrifice in this movie, I can't agree with your logic here. I personally think that having Rose prevent Finn from going on a suicide run made the most sense, but I could see the situation going either way and still being well written, and cannot mesh with someone saying that what we got in this instance was bad and Finn killing himself was the better outcome. And yeah, the First Order closing in with nothing to stop them from just flat out murdering everyone there? Nah. There's no tension there. Inevitable doom for the good guys isn't fucking tense. Listen, my attorney has advised me that there are things that I want to advise you to do that I should not advise you to do. So what I'm not going to do is tell you that you should know. Oh, come on! I am specifically saying that I'm not telling him to. Absolutely not. Look, I've had to deal with Jedha and Jedha's bullshit enough. I don't even want to know what kind of lawyers bronies have. You know, This is what I deserve for getting involved with the crafty cinematic universe.
And it would have given Rey something to work with, because now she lost 2 close friends. Her struggle with not falling to the dark side would have been given nuance and provide us with a great cliffhanger. Will she find a way to overcome the dark side or succumb to it in her grief? It would have been a kill 2 birds with 1 stone move, giving Finn a meaningful send-off as well as providing Rey with an actual dilemma to deal with, instead of just being a Mary Sue.
Okay, we'll get into the Mary Sue thing later, but yeah, losing 1 close friend, totally not a dilemma. Thinking you can trust someone only to have them start murdering the people who had your back? Totally not a dilemma, right? Finding out that your existence is functionally meaningless in the grand scheme of things? Okay, that one I have a different problem with, but it still creates a dilemma. The dark side has the potential to give her purpose and make her important where she's being told that she isn't. And the dilemma doesn't have to be cut and dry like that either. And it also does not require her friend to throw himself at a fucking battering ram in order to accomplish. Cannot stress that enough. The hero questioning their morality can be more subtle than a literal battering ram. It's totally fine.
But no, because Rian Johnson was so obsessed with shoving Rose in your face, we have to cheat Finn out of a legitimately heroic sacrifice. And then when The Rise of Skywalker came out, his entire character is nothing but background noise. It's practically a meme that all he does in that movie is shout Rey. He does nothing in The Last Jedi, and he does nothing in The Rise of Skywalker. At this point, you might as well have just had him die in his fight against Kylo because he serves absolutely no purpose after that scene. He goes through no meaningful growth or change after episode 7, so his presence on screen is just a waste of time.
Okay, so you partially hit on something I agree with. Finn wound up underutilized in Rise of Skywalker, and we'll most likely touch on why I think that happened later, but I don't agree with you that this was wasted. Finn, for most of the film, served as an emotional anchor for Rose, and a character can be less individually important than important because of who they are associated with, and it would still work just fine. That being said, I don't really think it did work here, and I personally feel that he may have been better served in Poe's place during most of the story, and have Poe go with Rose, which admittedly takes away the Phasma fight entirely, but the payoff could happen another time, like in the 3rd movie. Actually, better yet, let it happen in the ground battle. That would be cool as hell. This is because Finn makes more sense making decisions as brash and brazen as Poe did then. Well, Poe making those decisions. You get what I mean. They had writing to indicate why it was the other way around, however, so it's not an abject failure, but I definitely see your side of the argument, even if I don't entirely agree with it.
And then you have Rose. She is the worst. There's no 2 ways about it, she is the absolute worst. Maybe not the worst character in the trilogy, that would be this guy, but she's definitely the worst character in this movie. You thought Jar Jar Binks was insufferable? Jar Jar Binks is merciful compared to Rose Tico. At least with Jar Jar, there's the sense that he was made with the intent of being hated for how much he annoys the other characters and the audience. And mission accomplished there, because this turd was absolutely grating in both the verbal and visual sense. But Rose is made with the sense that we're supposed to like this character. We're supposed to relate to and sympathize with her. And they fail so badly at doing this. Every scene with this character is just a headache to get through. She is just an annoying airhead.
Okay, annoyance is kind of subjective, and there's issues with Jar Jar Binks way outside of him being annoying and unattractive? But what? Actually, fuck it. Since you can side tangent, so can I, bitch. Yeah, saying that she's not the worst character in the trilogy and then comparing her to Jar Jar Binks is outright proof that, well, you only know how to speak in hyperbole. I'm just gonna, brush aside the many racist implication of the entire Gungan race, and especially Jar Jar in particular, because that's been discussed to death, and quite frankly, I'm not the right person to discuss it in the first place. Instead, I'm just gonna address the way that you defend Jar Jar Binks here, and how it blows through everything you said earlier about the general tone of the franchise. Namely, the fact that you feel the need to mention how, at least it feels like he's intended to be hated. I mean, the theory that he was originally supposed to be revealed as a villain could be a reason, but given the fact that Ahmed Best pointed out the reason they backed away from his prominence was how hated he was, I doubt that really speaks to the whole picture. But look at the role he plays in the first movie. Primarily a comedic foil. As in, breaking from the serious tone of the movie in order to provide comic relief. Star Wars has always had comic relief characters in the movies, my dude, and the fact that you call any comic relief that occurs mood whiplash in this and call it uncharacteristic of Star Wars? My guy, what do you think the whole point of C-3PO was in the OT? But back on topic. Annoying. Subjective. I don't get what you find annoying about the character other than, well, possibly being racist against Vietnamese people? But obviously you don't say anything racist about her, or I would actually make that point. I kind of burped in the middle of my line there. As for being an airhead, I mean, yes, she was regularly in enemy territory and was, in fact, removed from that territory by way of spacecraft or aerial evacuation, so one could argue she meets the definition pretty well in this movie. But I'm guessing you mean the other one, to which I say, fucking what? I'm gonna give you a chance to explain this better, but it really sounds like you're grasping, my guy.
Imagine if the movie's uneven tone with its mood whiplash between trying to be serious and constantly relapsing into juvenile humor was concentrated into an actual character in the film. Now you have Rose Tico.
You know that being an airhead implies a lack of thought from the character, right? You know, like, well, for one, this video, but you're describing a character having a complex back and forth of emotional states. That's not airheadedness. That's called a third fucking dimension.
Our introduction to this character is seeing her mourning the loss of her sister, then suddenly getting excited and enthusiastic about meeting Finn.
And no person would ever feel both of these things back to back or possibly use enthusiasm around others in order to mask inner pain. This is going to be a deep point with me, and, well, let's just let him explain more of this concept so I can address how bad this is as a whole.
She tries to be all brooding and serious when talking about the corruption in Canto Bight, and then she's all giggly and bubbly while interacting with space horses. And even without that inconsistency, she is just so aggravating. The appeal to her character is supposed to be that she's a resistance fighter grieving over the loss of her sister who sacrificed herself during the bombing run. But with the way she behaves throughout the film, it feels like she's not taking the death of her sister as seriously as she should be.
So, this is personal now. Let me tell you about my relationship with death, MisAnthro, because I've dealt with quite a lot of it in my time. And death is a part of most people's lives, I'm aware, although not necessarily to this direct a degree. I lost every single one of my grandparents by the time I graduated high school. Quite literally, since my last grandmother died a few days before my graduation. No joke, I was at funerals at least once or twice a year during most of the childhood that I can remember for various members of my family. My guidance counselor from elementary school while I was in middle school. There's a long, long list. Dealt with a lot and learned to deal with it early. I wound up crying at one funeral that I can remember. I've cried over maybe 2 deaths total. And when I did, it was very open and outward. But even when I dealt with loss privately, I've always been the mindset that looking forward was the best way to honor the people who cared about me that I've lost. And one thing I did was, both for myself and the people around me, was to view things in a positive manner. So, what you said about Rose and how unrealistic her character is, that's me you're talking about. And might I ask, who the fuck do you think you are? No, for real. Not just speaking from the perspective of someone who has tried to maintain as much normalcy as possible in the face of feeling my world crumbling around me like Rose did, but as a human being. Who in the rat fuck do you think you are? Because here you are, casting judgment on the way that someone mourns loss, like someone should shut themselves away and not appreciate life around them. Hell, a lot of her happiness gets explained pretty well, especially in the 2 instances you described. Of course she'd be excited to meet someone who she thinks of as a hero and wants to look brave, because she would view her sister the same way. And on top of that, she even points out how she recently stopped someone from abandoning ship. So that shows that part of her excitement comes from her dedication to the cause, which, might be part of the reason that she can deal with Paige's death in the first place. Oh, and that later mood whiplash you were talking about with the horses. She was expressing why she hated these rich fucks and wanted to destroy them. Yeah, no idea why she'd be happy in the later scene when she's doing something that she was fantasizing about. Happiness, even in fleeting moments, can help one deal with loss, especially if that happiness comes from reliving the memories you once had. You know nothing about loss based on what you're saying here, and I take what you say here about Rose being a bad character because of the way she deals with loss as a personal fucking insult. Here's how personal the insult was. So normally I tend to watch a video all the way through at least once before I start a commentary on it. And sure, there's always a point where I know I'm going to cover the video. Normally one spot in particular that I just know I have a ton to say about, even before the video ends. I always keep watching, make sure that what I have to say still stands when taking in all of it. That sort of thing. Mentally take notes on what other points there are to go into. This one was different. I mean, you could obviously tell that this is the point where I decided to do the video. But this is also where I stopped my initial viewing. That's right. This point pissed me off so much that I couldn't even continue beyond it. I had to just start scripting from the beginning. In fact, I may have to take a break after recording these lines. Oh, and more importantly for right now, by the way, this is where the gloves come off.
And if that wasn't bad enough, you also have the scene where she prevents Finn from sacrificing himself to save the Resistance. There is so much wrong with this scene that it's not even something to joke about. So you prevented Finn from sacrificing himself because it's about not fighting what we hate, but saving what we love, despite that he was just trying to save the people he loves. Oh, and she also happens to be saying this while the Resistance base is being blown up as a result of her selfish actions. The Resistance that was also fighting to protect the people they love. And then you can top it off with the horrible decision to make Rose kiss him, confirming that this entire waste of a subplot was just an excuse to throw shipping fuel into the movie. Just what the fuck? There was no hint of romantic chemistry between these two throughout the entire movie.
I had to say that the gloves come off when you say something right. God damn it. Look, most of the ending of this movie was a giant mess for me, but for real, there's a lot of complex emotions going on behind why things were the way they were. For one, the Resistance arguably were fighting to protect what they love. Sure, which was an ideal more than actual people, and the concept of fighting for an ideal was actually what got Rose into the Resistance in the first place, as stated earlier in the film very directly, and the thing that you said was mood whiplash. So the concept of fighting for ideals could be argued as an expression of fighting against something you hate, as in against the ideal that opposes your own. Finn's sacrifice was also very much not guaranteed to do anything, and was essentially just him committing suicide. Rose ramming him out of the way makes sense for her character in this sense. She's lost too much, and she cares too much about him to let him throw himself into the bullet like that. That's not even to mention that given the distance Finn was away when he was knocked off course versus when the cannon actually fired, he wouldn't have actually gotten a chance to hit it. Yeah, maybe Rose, having seen her sister sacrifice herself and it not slow down the First Order, was traumatic enough on its own to not want that to happen to someone she's grown to care more and more about. That being said, you're right about one thing. The romantic chemistry between the two is kinda non-existent. Yet another Star Wars movie that doesn't know how to write romance. I mean, sure, they decide against it at the beginning of the next movie, but that just makes the kiss way more out of place.
None of the dialogue between them implied an intimate relationship even in hindsight, and even then their characters are so badly underdeveloped that you don't even feel investment in their relationship, and they only knew each other for maybe 2 days. So you're telling me that Rose was about to let the Resistance get slaughtered and have the First Order enslave the entire galaxy for a guy she only knew for 2 days? It might have been one thing if Rose had some kind of epiphany that Luke was coming to save them, but she didn't. No one did. If you take out the knowledge that Luke was going to show up a few minutes later, Rose just doomed the entire galaxy. She was going to waste her sister's sacrifice for her own personal desires. That is not sympathetic in the slightest.
I think you're forgetting what the point of attacking the Death Star cannon was in the first place. Remember how right after that, they said the distress signal was received by their allies, but no one was coming? Remember how the whole point of getting to the base was to call for help? Or, hey, better yet, remember Poe ordering Finn to back off? And this was the guy who engaged in a borderline suicide mission at the beginning of the movie, so what the fuck does that tell you about their chances of success? And sure, it's possible he would have made it, blown the thing up, died a hero, but it was also known that this wasn't a fight to outright stop the First Order, and the goal was survival for backup from the very beginning, with the whole point of stopping the cannon being to give them time. Shut up, phone, I don't care. Oh, and on top of that, we know why Rey was gone for most of the movie. To find Luke. They, presumably, know that by this point. No reason to assume they don't, at least. So, when they see the Millennium Falcon show up, who are they gonna assume is with them? Yeah, they actually did have a reason to believe Luke might be there.
Oh, and how about the hypocrisy in that it's not about fighting what we hate line, when just a few hours earlier you gleefully destroyed that casino you oh so hated, because you hated the whole profiting from war thing. I still remember my first time watching this scene, and when she closed her eyes I thought to myself, God, I hope she's dead.
Gonna be honest, would have been better if she was, especially considering what comes later. And yeah, not like characters can, develop. It's almost like she started the movie thinking one way and then ended it thinking another, when hypocrisy was framed as a realization. And this reminder is coming from someone who doesn't fucking like this scene!
Rose is that special kind of character who goes out of her way to ruin the entire experience with their mere presence. She's the Ashley from Resident Evil 4 of Star Wars. And even with all that aside, it's not just that she's an annoying character, it's that she's a poorly established one who has no purpose in the story. Even Jar Jar did things that served a purpose in the story, and not just his fuck-up that put Palpatine into power. Rose's sister served a higher purpose in the story, and she was in the film for like 3 minutes. What does Rose actually do plot-wise, besides screwing Finn out of his heroic sacrifice? Just some dumb in-your-face speech about the evils of capitalism and rich people?
Creating the distraction that allows Finn to beat Phasma? For how you harp on about the lack of focus given the Finn's fight with Phasma, you sure didn't pay attention to the 30 seconds we got. And didn't you say earlier that Finn was a background character and anyone could have gone with Rose? Hell, even in her introduction, she stops Finn from going off on his own, thus setting up most of the plot of this movie. And that tearing through the casino that you wanted to bitch about, yeah, totally wasn't her expertise in handling the horse that let them be able to create an escape route, was it? Fuck off with that noise! Miss me with that bullshit!
And for that matter, they don't even take the time to really delve into the connection between these two. When Rose starts discussing the corruption of Canto Bight, why wasn't there a follow-up talk between her and Finn? Finn was also kidnapped from his family and forced to serve under the First Order as a child. The two might have had something to relate to here. They were both forced into hardship as children, and they both experienced bad things from it. But instead of giving the two a chance to actually communicate and develop their relationship, they immediately skip over to the part where they find the codebreaker and then get arrested. Instead of the two being treated as equals, Finn is just set up as a comedic dumb character that serves as a way for Rose to explain pointless shit. There's never a moment where the two actually relate to each other or form some kind of bond. So Finn's presence just feels forced while they shove Rose in your face.
For one, like I said, Rose is totally irrelevant, right? But remember, Finn was only there as a catalyst for her story. And we know the backstory already, why do we need it spelled out for us again? But you're right, there is a difference between them. Finn's abuse leads him to fear, and Rose's abuse leads her towards hatred. But the problem is more a symptom of a bigger cause. They're kind of trying to have two movies at once, really. So Finn and Rose didn't really have room to breathe. I mean, the fact that the connection coming from that moment can be implied is great and all, but it could have been expounded on with another minute or two of screen time, not even that much.
And when you really think about it, what purpose did this even serve? Because the Finn and Rose subplot is unnecessary filler in every single way. Nothing they do has any effect on the actual story going on. Not Rey and Luke, not Kylo and Snoke, not Holdo and Poe, nothing. The trip to Canto Bight. What did this add to the plot? Oh, we find out a bunch of rich people are selling weapons to both sides and using the war for profit. Okay, that adds nothing.
Alright, but that does add something, though. Rose's hatred was based on the assumption that they were selling weapons to the First Order, and you don't see how the reveal that they were also selling weapons to the good guys muddles Rose's views on how evil they really are? Hell, that's part of the reason for her shift in perspective later.
We gave some random kids a resistance ring. They never have an impact on the story, so it's just a meaningless scene with no weight to it. We never see them again, so what's the point?
Yeah, what's the point of minor characters existing, really? This fucking droid that winds up catching them in the Star Destroyer, no point of it being there, it doesn't do anything else. Hell, the kids actually help enable the escape and serve as the indication of hope in the universe at the end of the movie. Noted especially at the end with the reveal that one of them is force sensitive. But no, they don't do anything. They don't matter. Fuck.
And then it's revealed that Finn and Rose's mission was pointless because Holdo actually had a plan the whole time. They needed to find the codebreaker to disable the device that allows the First Order to track the resistance through light speed, but then the guy ends up selling out their plan, which makes Holdo look even worse for simply not explaining anything, which would have prevented all these people from getting killed. You could have just made it so that the Order was anticipating Holdo's plan to attack them by surprise, which would allow them to be intimidating instead of incompetent. So this entire side quest just becomes completely irrelevant in the grand scheme of things.
Okay, but at least I saw the purpose of that, even if, you know, this is the part where I really start complaining about the movie the most. Like, there's so many sidewinds going on here that this is where we have the false hopeless spot, as I like to call it. This is the point where things look hopeless, but we still got another hour or so of screen time, so it's obviously not. Hell, I'd argue that they should have just ended the movie after Holdo's sacrifice here and saved the ground battle for the beginning of the next movie, but that's just it. A side quest was relevant to how the information got to the First Order, and thus it's relevant to what the characters learn. Poe wouldn't have learned as much if he didn't have to contend with having to follow orders, and he finds out what her plan is, evacuation, and mounts a fucking mutiny. Did you forget that part? Like, again, there's shit to complain about, but when you put all the character motivations together, most of this actually does make sense, with one event leading to the other.
Everything about the subplot with Finn and Rose is just a waste of screen time. They have no influence on the actual plot whatsoever. All we get is some meaningless world building that doesn't influence anything that happens in The Rise of Skywalker. And the most damaging thing about this subplot is that maybe, if you cut it out of the movie, all the time spent on it could have been contributed to the other storylines. Stuff that's actually important. The stuff with Finn and Rose is so inconsequential that it plays out as a completely different movie.
So, remember how you were complaining about how the opening crawl didn't do a good job of establishing stakes? In other words, being wrong like you've been doing this entire video? So, tell me, what did talking about what the First Order did to Rose and why Rose is a part of a resistance do? It established in more detail what those stakes are and what that tyranny from the First Order means. So, it's a thing you complained about not being explained, being explained. Oh, well, it's bad because I have a big cut.
Like a spin-off or a side story. And the movie spends over 40 minutes of his runtime on this bullshit. All those minutes that could have been given to Rey's training, Luke coming to terms with his past, Poe and his scuffle with Holdo, Kylo planning to overthrow Snoke. All the time wasted on these two would have been better spent elsewhere. You could easily cut out this entire subplot and you would lose nothing. And knowing that so much time is wasted on this subplot makes the overall pacing even more horrible. It really feels like all the stuff with Rey, Luke, Kylo, and Holdo is completely rushed and not given proper development because they wasted so much time on this stupid shipping fuel. And the broken comedy on top of that makes the pacing even worse. Both of these things are constantly breaking up the story at inconvenient times, needlessly dragging out scenes and causing a lot of stuff to be underdeveloped. It makes the movie as a whole so jagged and sluggish. It's 2.5 hours long, but it feels so much longer because of how badly it's paced. All this forced comedy in the Finn and Rose subplot is nothing but a great big compiled distraction, and everything else in the movie suffers as a result.
Or, maybe, and hear me out here, maybe you're just full of shit. I burped when I was about to speak. I have already thoroughly addressed what you had to say about the comedy. Could have sworn you were moving on there, but many of these things honestly didn't need more time to develop, as I'm sure I'll get to elaborate on during the rest of the video, because you're very repetitive. And I'm someone who thinks this movie could have used a trim, but that's just it. The Phasma death scene is a climax that also helps serve to lead to the conclusion. There's uncertainty and also finality. You know, kind of like what the ending to Empire Strikes Back had. Just saying.
Such as the Holdo subplot. If there was any proof that the sequel trilogy was used as a mouthpiece for Kathleen Kennedy's feminist-driven politics, this would have to be it. though derailing the entire lore for the sake of making Rey the most special person in the entire galaxy can count as a close second. So throughout this movie, we're led to believe that Holdo, the woman, is an irresponsible leader not doing anything about the impending doom of the Resistance, while Poe, the man, puts together a plan to save everyone. But then it's revealed that Holdo had a plan all along and Poe was a reckless idiot for taking matters into his own hands.
Okay. You're not serious right now, are you? No, really, surely you're not trying to tell me that because Holdo is female and Poe is male, that makes the entire thing feminist propaganda. Yeah, several holes in that logic. Right, so let me start with the plot line in isolation. For one, Poe was demoted from his position because he was reckless before Holdo even took command, and it serves as the implied reasoning for Holdo not making him privy to what the plan was, which was the whole reason he thought he needed to take matters into his own hands in the first place. There's a dynamic that requires both of them to be wrong to a certain extent, so calling it feminist propaganda that paints woman as hero and man as stupid the way you lay it out is, well, beyond wrong. Okay, so let's take a look at this idea of feminist propaganda and place it in the context of the whole movie. Remember that fight scene between Finn and Rose that you bitched about? Well, it could be argued that Finn needing Rose's help to win falls in with that. The fact that the only female villain in the entire trilogy got such a flash-in-the-pan conclusion would indicate that the men are the major characters and not the women in that scenario. Same goes for Rose saving Finn in the ending. The man can't sacrifice himself, he's too important, so the woman has to die. In fact, more named female characters die or are severely injured in this movie than men, so how exactly is this feminist propaganda? Maybe to some degree feminist leaning, considering how many important female characters there are, but let's look at this from more franchise-wide perspective. On top of the third movie's attempt to paint both Kylo and Rey as the heroes, kind of making the whole woman butter the male kind of moot, how about we go back to the beginning and ending of the first movie? Remind me, who was everyone looking for in order to save the fate of the galaxy? That's right, Luke Skywalker. A man. Who does Rey go off to find? That same man. Who winds up saving the Resistance in the end after all their other plans failed? That's right, the man himself, Luke Skywalker. See, this is part of the reason that I kind of call bullshit on people calling the whole trilogy feminist propaganda. Yes, female characters play more important roles than in previous movies, but you mean to tell me that you think this is putting woman on a pedestal when the men are depicted as just as or more important solely because the main lead happens to be female? Fuck all the way off.
Now, this might not have been a problem or felt incredibly sexist if it was a well-written subplot, but it's not a well-written subplot, and the way they demonstrate Holdo's interactions with Poe are so blatantly one-sided that it feels like something Anita Sarkeesian would write. She just comes across as needlessly condescending. When addressing his recklessness, Holdo is being incredibly disrespectful to someone who's supposed to be the highest-ranking pilot in the Resistance.
Except he's not, because he was just fucking demoted, dumbass! There was a reason presented for her to condescend to him, and it's the first thing she says to him. My fuck! I mean, granted, she's kind of a bitch, but give the movie credit for telling you why she doesn't get along with Poe.
Poe might have went against Leia's wishes, but given the context of what was happening at the time, Poe kind of made the right call. The Dreadnoughts are regarded as fleet killers, meaning that they absolutely would have destroyed what's left of the Resistance given the chance, and they were tracking them through light speed anyway. If they didn't destroy it, the Order would have obliterated their ship. There would have been no time for Holdo's evacuation plan or even Poe's plan to disable the tracker. Poe is supposed to be seen as in the wrong, but he actually saved the Resistance.
That would make sense if he actually knew about the tracker when he went against Leia. And there's more reasons why the Resistance actually survived that onslaught after the hyperspace jump, and that involved Kylo stalling when he had his sights set on Leia. So they dealt less damage and Leia survived. Sidebar though, that scene is, well, something I don't like about the movie, but to be honest, it'd be better for me to talk about that if and when you bring it up later. Like, the entire point of calling out Poe as reckless is that he may have been accidentally in the right this time, but as Leia pointed out, what they gained was not worth what they lost, given the information they had. Just because what you did accidentally gave a tactical advantage doesn't mean it was good, dingus, as indicated by his plan later.
Not telling him the plan because he's a hothead is a stupid justification, and it's also a really dangerous thing to do. If you have a hothead in your ranks, then keeping him in the dark about a plan he might agree with is the stupidest thing you can do. And he ends up agreeing with the plan anyway. They didn't tell him the plan just for the sake of artificial suspense. Why? Because Leia demoted him 5 minutes ago? Now, aside from that playing into a really big running problem with the movie, that being it was written by people who have really shitty ideas for how the military operates, it makes no sense that Holdo wouldn't tell Poe or anyone else about the plan.
First of all, that kind of is how the military works, although not to the degree of this or other movies do it. See, there is such a thing as classified information, and tactics not being shared below a certain clearance, like the type of clearance Poe may have lost from a demotion. That being said, a potential activation order would likely not be something that would be above clearance, especially not all the way up until the point where it was about to be issued. Something else I think you're forgetting about too, he didn't agree with the plan, you chucklefuck. Yeah, the plan to evacuate wasn't something he agreed with until Leia explained where they were evacuating to, and more importantly, that the First Order was less likely to care about the transports. For one, it was kind of stupid in the first place, since of course they would eventually open fire on the transports, and for two, the existence of the old Rebel base was likely something that would be above Poe's clearance. I totally agree with you that the emergency evacuation order would be something that would already be seen as a possible necessary outcome, but let's call a spade here. The plan, as the rest of the ship would have known about it, would still not be something Poe would have agreed with.
Even if he was being reckless or was rightfully demoted, that literally has nothing to do with anything.
Yes, it does! Demotion means you have less privilege! Stop getting onto the movie for not knowing how the military works when you know even less!
Neither of those things have anything to do with whether or not he was privy to a plan.
Yes, it fucking does! Depending on his rank, all you would get is an evacuation order, you dumb fuck!
There was no reason to leave anybody in the dark. Maybe if there were concerns for a spy within the ship, but this was never brought up at any point as an issue.
Okay, do you know what clearance is? Those of a lower rank would be privy to less information, because different pieces of information have different classification levels. It's the reason why the general public isn't supposed to know about military tactics or where the military is investigating something. Even though I agree with you that the evacuation order as a whole should have already been given, we don't know what was or was not classified information and at what point something declassifies for what ranks. In addition, rank tends to be an indication of loyalty as well, so guess what lowering someone's rank indicates? Especially when the reason for lowering their rank was a violation of a direct order.
It would have been far more sensible to give him evidence that she knew what she was doing instead of making him believe in her out of blind faith. While it's true that the chain of command should be respected, it's also tangible to explain your plans to your teammates to maintain people's trust in you. And when you're in a dire situation, respect should work both ways.
See, I kind of agree that Holdo was a little stupid here, because even if clearance was an issue, she could have very well stated the concept of her plan without violating that clearance. But that's the problem. Here you say evidence that you know what you're doing, and that's true. That doesn't mean revealing the whole plan, and as a reminder, only when the plan involved a stated destination did Poe agree with it, something she may not have been able to give. You're right, though. Respect is a two-way street. But information can have a lot of restrictions in a military organization, and someone like Poe was never going to just be cool with an evacuation order without more information than he is probably privy to. And Holdo is presented as someone who is more rigid with military structure than Leia is.
There was no reason for Holdo to disrespect Poe like this, because in the beginning, Poe was willing to respect Holdo. He was just showing a few concerns regarding a plan she refused to tell him, a plan that would have taken 3 sentences and half a minute to explain. Even during the mutiny, she still doesn't bother to explain anything to him. It might have been one thing if the situation wasn't so dire and Poe was just some random private at the bottom of the chain with Holdo being so far up, but Poe isn't just some random private. He's regarded by Kylo Ren himself as the best pilot in the Resistance.
I had no idea we had the best pilot in the Resistance on board.
And he's also very respected as a fleet commander.
I feel like I've said this before. He got demoted from commander to captain. That's why she doesn't give him information. Are you fucking stupid or just dumb? You can be respected at one moment and then lose that respect later, numbnuts. Kylo Ren calling him the best doesn't fucking mean that Holdo agrees either. And being a good pilot doesn't make you a good leader, which is a good reason for demotion out of a leadership position. On top of that, He already knows the basics of what the plan is. He knows they need to lose the First Order and find a new base, which is exactly the point of the tactics Holdo uses, which is the part he wouldn't be privy to as captain, you dicking fucklechuck. You know, that actually sounds better than I gave Silver credit for.
And the situation was incredibly dire. It was a life or death situation to save what was left of the Resistance. Why would you not tell a hothead about the plan if you know they're most likely gonna act on their own since they don't know what's going on?
Because of exactly what happened. Poe telling Finn and Rose about the evacuation order was exactly why the Empire wound up seeing through the plan, because it was how DJ got the information to give to the Empire. So, telling him not agreeing with the plan, and revealing it sooner. That's why you don't tell the hothead you just demoted all the details of the plan, idiot.
I just find it really ironic that Poe is portrayed as a reckless idiot for risking the lives of the Resistance on his Finn and Rose plan, but then Holdo and Leia do the exact same thing, risking the survival of the Resistance on an attempt to land on some nearby planet without being noticed. And that's kind of the issue that I have with Holdo and Leia's plan. It relies entirely on the incompetence of the First Order.
Based on the dialogue from when the plan was discovered, they had to do a scan in order to verify the information DJ gave them. So one thing we could assume is that this scan wouldn't have been performed if not for DJ's interference. We'll probably get more into that later, but yeah, to a certain degree, it does rely on incompetence on the part of the First Order, but we'll let the strategy gamer explain why they came to a risky plan. See, when choosing what actions to take, normally you would consider what failure means, to what degree you can fail, and the likelihood of any given outcome, which is complex and not always something you're going to get right. In the case of both plans, it's do or die. Succeed or you lose the game outright. I mean, in the case of Poe's plan, there's a small chance that you have something that fails and you still get to fall back on another plan as backup, but considering we already know we're relying on an outsider in order to execute this, that comes with greater risk of the backup plan, so doing so wouldn't be a very good option. So we may as well treat this as both, calculating based solely on the chance of success. So tell me, which do you think is more likely? Finding something on the enemy ship that doesn't belong, or finding something on your own ship that doesn't belong? When you put it like that, the answer becomes pretty fucking obvious, doesn't it? That's just it. Both plans are risky, but a strategist is more likely to pick the less risky plan unless they think it's obvious enough that the enemy will see it coming. But considering how surprised the Resistance was at being able to be tracked through light speed, I would wager that the tactic the First Order is using would be new enough that a hole like this in it has gone completely unexplored and is more likely to remain unconsidered than someone who already defected from the First Order going back and not being recognized.
Poe rightfully points out that transports are completely defenseless and they'll be done for if they get spotted. Holdo and Leia claim that the Order wouldn't be tracking smaller ships, but why the fuck wouldn't they? They don't lack the capacity to do so, and it's a really easy advantage to pick off smaller ships whenever they emerge. It's only when Finn and Rose get caught that they get the idea that maybe they should be looking out for smaller ships.
Okay, this sounds like a legitimate complaint on the surface, but there's a couple of reasons it falls flat. For one, like I said, it stands to reason such a scan wouldn't be considered necessary, since it sounds like the tactic the First Order is using is unheard of prior. Very simple to think that it's just gonna work, full stop. Second, well, this is an issue with everything you say about military tactics, so I'll save it for my final thoughts. Actually, I'm not sure if I even say it in my final thoughts. Fuck it. And the third is the reason that, alright, let's assume they noticed the smaller ships anyway without DJ's information. They wouldn't have the information about how thorough the evacuation is or how much of the staff still remain on the ship. So it would actually stand to reason that their firepower would be split between the main ship and the escape ships, making it more likely that more escape pods would get free. And that, of course, assumes that they run a decloaking scan at the same time that they do now and notice the evac ships, and don't just assume they're done for and will be easy to pick off after they get rid of the ship with the actual weapon systems, thus potentially giving the evac ships time to escape anyway. It's more likely that a scan like that would be run closer to the endpoint of actual potential threat being eliminated in order to wipe out what's left, in which case it would buy a lot more time. Part of the reason the plan worked is because without the First Order knowing when the evacuation was going to happen, they would be less capable of counteracting it even if they did have the means to.
So I can only assume that the reason the plan would have worked was because the First Order is made up of complete idiots, which heavily undermines how they're supposed to be a great threat. Oh, and wouldn't you know it, Holdo not telling Poe about the plan ends up blowing up in her face because that's exactly what gets them caught. Finn and Poe wouldn't have gone on the side quest which led to the Codebreaker informing the Order about Holdo's plan if Holdo simply told Ho about the plan.
And what if he jumped the gun? Or tried to provide a distraction that backfired? Her plan required a very controlled and calculated approach. That's why she was telling him to stand down, because controlled and calculated isn't the way that Poe operates. Ugh!
Why did she simply not tell Poe about the plan? She told that random blonde lady about the plan, so why not anybody else?
Because Commander Daisy is a commander, and Poe isn't, you chungo!